Hi folks, welcome once again to a Gaz Labs short video. I'll get rid of that. One of the questions that I'm asked an awful lot is regards antennas. What should I get for an antenna? What will work for me? What's the best antenna? Now that's a really difficult question to ask. There is no straightforward answer to it. It's not what works for me won't work for you. You may be able to afford a bought antenna. You might have a field for a garden. I don't know. In which case, then obviously there are other things you can do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and cover bought antennas, why they cost so much, why sometimes you can buy like a big Yagi or something like that and it costs £1,000, why you can cost one vertical which might cost 500, and why some are like 100. So I think what we'll do is we'll split this into two sort of parts. I'll talk about some of the antennas that I've been making here, and maybe we'll look at I don't know, we'll look at the My Mag Loop, which I've been sort of slowly building, and another little project here as well, which is basically an unun with a telescopic whip on the top. Right, so first of all, purchased antenna. When you buy an antenna, why do they cost what they cost? Well, example, this is a super antenna. This is an early one. I've had this for a long time. Well, I say it's a bit like Trigger's broom, really, I suppose. I mean, I did break this bit and I've bought a new one since. But this is a piece of tube which goes inside another piece of tube. Basically, it's like a screwdriver antenna. This is a very similar design as an ATAS 120 or an ATAS 100, I think they were, where they are motorized, and effectively these things extended and sort of shrunk, and that give you your inductance for the telescopic whip to work. Now you can see here these are typically about £250 off the top of my head, but you can see what's involved in this. You've got machined parts which slot inside a piece of aluminium tube. Again, this is precision machined, obviously to take the inner coil. In here you've got some contacts, you've got silvered wire here, you've got a nylon inner which is again machined, and then it's threaded with like an Acme type thread. Obviously then you've got another piece which goes inside. You've got telescopic whip parts, you've got all of the base, you've got other coils which are all made, and all these things take time and money and experience and skill and all of the above to make. So you can kind of see where the money goes and where it's being sort of soaked up. There are other things around, and sort of some of the things that I like. Okay, so now I'm going to mention I'll mention the Hustler 6B TV. They're typically about 270, sort of 279 quid, something like that off the top of my head. I like those antennas because they are 7 meters tall. They're not in your face, and they don't need anything really sort of special to put them up. You only need a piece of pole which is buried in the ground. You don't even need to concrete it. They just need a knocked in stake, or in my case, because there's I've got a concrete or something under the ground, I can't knock a stake in the ground. So what I've done is I've taken 5 small stakes, put them round, and then just hydrated the soil, and eventually it's sort of like, and I put a few radials out as well which have just been absorbed, and I use a 6 BTV derivative in my garden. I have a very small plot. I'm right on the edge of London here. It's quite noisy. It's not a bad antenna. It works for me, and I'm happy with it. I've kind of stayed with it. But then you've got other things as well, things that I like, and I don't have one. I've never used one. However, I think they're worthwhile a mention. And not only that, he's a jolly nice fellow, but DX Commander antennas. They're basically, it's a fiberglass pole, a quarter wave antenna with a radial system. Not only that, he's actually got like he's basically done a range of bands on the same on a single antenna. Now these are not overly expensive pieces of kit, and then the beauty with that one is you don't need planning permission, you don't need any special requirements putting it up. You could potentially put in a radial system and leave it there. I do know of people that have used these antennas and really rave about them, and actually have put them into their garden and left them up, and they're still up 2 years later. Probably, you know, they're probably not going to last, you know, for say 10 years, whereas something like a 6B TV would outside all the time. But nonetheless, they're a really good temporary antenna if you're in a position where, you know, maybe your wife doesn't like antennas and you can only just get them up in the evening because the neighbours complain or whatever. Something like a DX Commander is absolutely perfect. And that will work really, really well. And again, the same can be said for something like a Hustler 6B TV, which have the knockover posts where you basically put there's a plate that you put on them, they just lift and then they tilt, and you can lay them down in a garden and never see them during the day. At night time you just lift them up. If it's stormy, you just lift them up or knock them down, you know, whatever you want. They work really, really well. So vertical antenna systems can be as much or as little as you want. If you look at something like the Cushcraft range, I think there's an R6000, is it, or something like that, I don't know, but they're like £400-500, and I my personal opinion is, would I buy one of those? Probably not, to be honest. For me, it's just not a good enough. It's not an investment that I really want to make in my location at the moment. I'm, like I said, I'm on the outskirts of London here. It's a KT postcode, so basically, you know, I'm doomed where RF is concerned. All I can really hear is all the lampposts and people's plasma tellies, but that's another story. So you get my drift. Okay, there's plenty of stuff out there that you can use. People often ask me what are my thoughts on random wires. I try not to think about them too much. Random wires aren't great. Okay, they're very noisy antennas. There are things you can do, and I'm sure that there's antenna specialists out there or people that know much more about antennas than I do, who will explain to you how you can make them quiet and absolutely wonderful. That's absolutely fantastic. If they have a YouTube channel or if they have a website, I would recommend that you pop along there and listen to them intently. So probably the best thing for me, I think, is if you've got the space, if you've got a long enough garden, okay, and you're just on a very tight budget, I would always use something like a doublet or a tuned dipole. That's going to be the quietest antenna that you're likely to get on a budget. It's, like I say, it's very, very cheap. You only need a dipole center. You might need something like a matching transformer. I don't know. You need to experiment with that. But you just build a dipole, just a little center, maybe a little tuner for some of the bands that it might not get for you, and you'll get a very successful experience out of something like that. One of the other things that I get asked a lot is sort of things that regards the mag loops, in particular MFJ mag loops. Now the MFJ, everything's going on. MFJ make a very successful mag loop, and I'm not going to say they're bad because they're not, okay. However, the build quality of them from the factory sometimes it is a bit different, okay. They arrive into they often arrive and there's bits loose in them and that sort of stuff. They're built to a price, okay, basically. There are things you can do. I'd recommend, if you've bought one and you've not bought it from where I work, because we do that prior to them selling, there is a QC check. But if you buy them from anywhere, they always ask if they've been if there's been a QC check, because that's really important, that they are checked. Like I said, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them or anything like that. They just need to be checked first, and they work really well. They do actually work. So the little 1 meter diameter mag loop, they work a treat in some circumstances. okay, that may not work for you. Okay, that's the important thing to remember. Antennas are just the most fickle beasts ever. Then the other questions that I'm asked, you know, which one's better, the MFJ or the Cirro? Well, the answer is, and that one is going to be every single time is going to be the Cirro, mainly because of the way they tune, mainly because of the difference in build quality, the passion that goes into those antennas is unbelievable. I mean, truly, the Cirro have become really good friends of mine, and I can't say enough good about them. Their product is just amazing. It's really well made. The tuning and equipment, the tuner and everything is very good. The way that it works, it's very clever, intuitive. However, like anything, they do have some foibles. They don't work everywhere. Okay, so we've had cases where people have put them inside lofts and stuff like that with steels and whatever. They do not like that. They do not like being up high. They don't need to go up high. They don't reflect energy. They reflect energy rather than the ground absorbing energy, the way some antenna systems work. So they're incredibly useful products in your armory. The downside with them is they do not like excess RF energy around them. So if you've got, like, say, a linear or another antenna system, and you've got to remember that tuner box is like is a radio basically. If you leave it connected and then key up something next to it, then chances are you're going to hurt that box. That box is going to be damaged. So you need to find a way of isolating those two, whether it be a switch or something going into a dummy load, whatever it is. They're the sort of the things you've got to remember with these sort of solutions. But the bottom line is they work extremely well, really well. So moving on to other things. So what we covered verticals. We talked about DX Commander, 6BTV, long wires, dipoles, doublets. What else? Fan dipoles. Fan dipoles are really good. If you don't have a tuner, maybe, then you can use a fan dipole, and I think the DX Commander is half a fan dipole, so he's basically tuned other wires for various other bands, and that means you don't need a tuner for those, and it works. It's very efficient. You're getting the most you can out of that particular design of antenna. But fan dipoles, where you've actually got something hanging in the sky with basically wire, equal lengths of wire balanced out of each side, but then they fan out like a bit like an angel's wing, and they're sort of strung up and they go up high. They work a treat. They're very good at antennas, and the ones that I'd recommend of those would probably be the Alpha Delta. They are very good. But again, you can make all this stuff you can pretty much make. Even down to screwdriver antennas, these things, if you really got the machinery and stuff. Right, let's talk about homebrew. Some people are on a very tight budget, and I've picked this up from a rally, or this is coming to the shop as Silent Key. You know, it can't be sold. It is basically bin fodder. This would go in the bin, or someone would put something in the charity box for it. I've picked it up, and before it goes in the bin, and I'm going to use it. So I've got a little job for that, and I'll show you what it is. This is something that I'm building now. This is the start of a 9-to-1 unknown. I've got the transformer up there, which I've wound. The transformer goes inside. It's going to be potted up in there with silicon, so it just sticks to the back and actually stands freely out in there. This is going to be dual purpose. There's two things that I can do with this, and I don't quite know how to do it yet. I'm thinking about it. But what you could do is you can put this SO239 on the side, and actually if you put something like a 3/8 antenna mount on the bottom, okay, what you can do with this, you can screw a a fishing stainless steel pole into the bottom of it, and this pushes into the ground, a bit like the chameleon type antennas, very similar sort of idea. And on the top here I'm going to put a CB mount type thing, and then this telescopic thing will screw in the top, and this will give me a 9-to-1, and on the bottom this will do whatever. And I've basically got a really cheap and cheerful, although a bit engineered, homebrew solution that will work. It will do its job. It won't be the most efficient thing, but it will work. What else? Copper to wire. Right, okay, so we go back a bit to mag loops. Now, mag loops don't need to be hugely complicated, and what I would recommend is utilizing something like coax, old coax. Now, I've been using Broad Pro 50, I think it is. Very stiff stuff anyway. You can use anything you want. We picked up about sort of 6 or 7 meter lengths of Anderton or Anderson, whatever it is, coax, heliax, that type of stuff. So what you can do is you can just modify that up so you've got like 2 meter lengths or so. You can, if that's if it's damaged or something like that, because trust me, do not cut that type of coax up, it's too valuable. But if you've got some that is, you know, short lengths of it, that maybe they've been trapped in under a rock or something and it's damaged, and you've got 2 meters left, you can utilize the plugs. You can make a 2 meter ring. It's nice and stiff, and what that will do is, you can see this here, I put two SO239 connectors on the side. I'm just going to put the actual coax either side of that, and in the center here I've got basically a junk box find capacitor. That will give me that in turn, that will give me the tuning for it. You just need a driven loop, which is usually something like either a 1/5 or a 1/7 or an 1/8 of the size of the big loop. You can have a little play with that and just see what works. Originally I was going to, on this, I was going to use this. Now this is a geared motor. This is by Como Drills, and essentially this just basically converts something very high speed into something very slow. So you can see here it's hardly moving, and in fact in here there's still another gear to go, so it actually moves incredibly slow. The downside with this is that this would need to be driven with a PWM, which is a simple circuit to make. You can make it with an NE5 555 or whatever you like, and that would actually work. You can put a switch on it, go forward or backwards, whatever you want, and happy days. That would work a treat. But you can see that it's got a bit of overrun. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, now what that will do is when you stop tuning, it could run on just for a brief second, and that's enough with a mag loop, because obviously the bandwidth or the Q is just so very fine that it could just drift one way or the other. So my plan 2 is to use a servo. Okay, this is just a simple model aircraft servo. However, this does require a driver. What it needs is basically positive and negative, 6 to 8 volts, I think. But then you need a 20 millisecond pulse, and that pulse then needs to have a bit of pulse width adjustment, and when you adjust that, depending on whether it's going out, then it will go one way. If it's going in, it will go the other, and the rate that it goes in or out gives the speed. It monitors for change basically. However, so you will need a little circuit like this one. Now this is something that I've been building, and to be honest with you, my calculations aren't quite right. It does work, but not very well. It does need a little bit of fine tuning, which I'm working on. Okay, but that does mean then I can bury this inside, run the little servo, and drill a hole in the front, and that will give me my tuning. But again, you don't have to go this elaborate. You could do something very similar to this, but instead just glue a like something like a fiberglass or a nylon rod onto one end of this, poke it out the end there, put a knob on it, job done. Okay, you don't need to get complicated with this stuff. Truly, it's just, it is what it is. Now I think I've rabbited on quite long enough. I hope that I've not bored you to tears, and that I've maybe inspired you to get out there and maybe build some stuff for yourself, or point you in the right direction where you can get some bits and pieces. By all means, I will put, or if you've got questions, by all means ask in the comments. Can't promise I can answer them. I'm not really that smart, but if you have any questions, do ask. I can always ask the engineers at work, or you know, I know enough people to maybe find out the answer for you. But yeah, but it's all about going out there and having fun and working with others, because that's the important thing I think these days with radio amateurs and the maker community, and just generally making things and electronics and stuff like that. It's not something you want to really sit indoors and just tinker away all afternoon. You've got to get out there and, you know, get to the rallies, get to the you know, the raspberry jams, get to the you know, all of these sort of things, the maker sort of festivals when they come up. It's really important that people get out there and talk about it. And these Facebook groups now, there's tons and tons of Facebook groups all popping up. You need to get on those as well. And of course, YouTube is just the most amazing resource I think that we have, and it's all about community. So keep it coming down the bottom there. My only request is that if you've got something rude to say, or if you feel in any way that you need to gob off, do it elsewhere. Really, I don't need to hear it, I don't need to see it, and it, you know, it will be deleted. It's as simple as that. So yeah, happy days. Homebrew. See you soon. Bye.